Today's message from Dr. Christian Sorensen was recorded December 16th, 2018, and it's titled, Do You Hear What I Hear? Affirming, I feel the presence of the divine all around. And today we welcome back the spirit, voice, and artistry of Margaret Owens, who can be found on her Facebook page or on her website. Come visit us on our website at seasidecenter.org, and you can always join us in Encinitas, California sometime, where we always have great music, a spirited message, and a joyful, loving, vibrant community that always await your presence.
Good morning. It's my honor to introduce our guest artist, and we love when she's down here. She's just got such beautiful songs, beautiful voice, beautiful spirit. The songs that she's going to do today are actually off of her brand new Christmas album. So if you're moved by her songs, which I'm pretty sure you will be, please see her after the service and check it out. So, but without further ado, help me welcome our very own lovely Margaret Owens.
They did bring all to welcome the birth of the light here on earth. Oh, the child, what a night! It brought the promise of a new day and the light within us all. It brought the making of a new way. Glad sometimes did you hear the angels call? What a child, what a night! What a star, what a light. Brought a heaven above to light up the dark. What a child, what a night. Take it, Bob. Can you feel the light returning? 'Cause it is, child, don't you know? Can't you feel the embers burning? Deep within you there's a set your heart aglow. What a child, what a night. What a star, what a light. Shown from heaven above with a message of love. What a child, what a night. All to welcome the birth of the light here on earth. What a child, what a night. Brought a heavenly spark to light up the dark. What a child, what a night. Shown from heaven above with a message of love. What a child, what a night.
That is Margaret Owens with Rebecca J. just rocking us with a new number from your Christmas CD. Very nice. What a child, what a night. I love that. You know, heaven above, a message of love. That all works. Good job with that. That's nice. Margaret Owens. Oh, woo. All right, so do you hear what I hear, inspired by that song that Rebecca sang? One of my favorites as well for the holiday season. I remember the first time I heard it, I was a little guy sitting in my dad's lap in the church on a Christmas kind of service. And there was the choir guy singing the song with a little girl dressed up in a lamb in his arm. And do you hear what I hear? And it stuck with me ever since. Became my favorite in that moment. And so I've sat with that title a lot. Do you hear what I hear? Do you see as I see? It's God speaking here. And a lot of times we get caught up in our stories and we don't hear what Spirit has to say. We get caught up in our myths. And what's interesting is there are some Christmas myths or ideas that we share in common. And so, Marv, you want to put them up here? I just want to go over these with you. So based on the Gospels, what did Mary ride on the road to Bethlehem? Donkey. How soon after they reached Bethlehem was Jesus born? That night. Right? What animals were gathered about in the manger? Sheep, goats, cows, all that stuff. And how many wise men were there? 3. How did the star compare in brightness to the others? The brightest, right? Who else besides the wise men saw the star? Shepherds. Did Joseph ever meet the wise men? Sure. Yeah, why not? So, I just want to share with you that none of those things are told in the Bible. We have conjured up the story to go with all of them. The Bible said, what did Mary ride on the road to Bethlehem? All it said is that, went to Bethlehem. She could have ridden there in a dune buggy through the desert for all we know. But we said it was a donkey. And how soon after they reached Bethlehem was Jesus born? All it said was she was great with child. It didn't say she had a kid that night, But somehow we have come up with that. What animals were gathered about the manger? Nowhere does it say these friendly animals, hung out at the birth of that kid. And how many wise men were there? I love this one. Nowhere did it say 3 wise men. I think they probably came up with it because there were 3 gifts, so there might as well have been 3, but there could have been 33 wise men there. You just don't know, but that is our myth. And how did the star compare in brightness with the others? It never talked about the nature of the star. It said the wise men followed the star that came to rest above the manger. We're the ones who came up with brightness. And who else saw it? Well, we figured the shepherds saw it because they were hanging out outside that night. And why they're out in the middle of December, I don't know. But supposedly these guys are out there, but nowhere did it say they saw a star. The angel filled them in on the news, right? It was the angel who said what was going on. And so who knows if Joseph ever met the wise men, 3 or 33 of them. It just doesn't say. And so these are some of our Christmas myths that we hold near and dear to our heart that some will defend to the very end. But what I want us to get is that how easy it is for us to create myths, to love our myths, to stand by our myths, to worship our myth, because they are our truth. So be aware of what myths that you're creating in your life that you hear and you see that are your reality that really are not true. Right? What myths and stories are you looking at that are not supportive, that are not empowering, that make you less than? It's easy to embrace these stories as we think. Imagine all those things we're telling ourselves that we have our whole belief system based around. And so what we want to do is, if we're going to tell ourselves stories, we might as well use empowering stories, right? You're a child of God, that I'm able to see as Spirit sees. Do you hear what I hear? Do you see what it is I see? Am I able to, if I'm making up stories, am I able to look at greater possibilities as opposed to the ones that are creating a limitation or a lack or a scarcity? Because I'll tell you, we got enough limitations on our own. There is really no need for us to listen to critics and take on their limitations. It's just, it doesn't make sense. And so as we do our mindfulness, as we sit there in deep contemplation, let us bring those thoughts that inspire us to love. If we're going to do anything in life, let us come from love, not limitation, not lack, not upset, not scarcity, but with a greater sense of the possibility, because I hear, and I see the greater expression of Spirit here, no matter what it is. And one of the one of the Christmas stories that always holds dear to my heart was about a young minister and his wife starting off their ministry work in a new church. It was at one time a magnificent church, but it had just been run down. It was after World War II. It was in an affluent part of town. No longer it was in a nice part of town. So, this kid gets this old place to say, hey, make it work, kiddo. But he shows up October of 1948, all excited. He and his wife, they took this new, to them, a new church, old church, and needed a lot of work. And they were determined in October that it was going to be pristine and sparkling for the candlelight service. I like his thinking already. And so they started painting and plastering and they spent 3 months getting it ready. And a couple days before the candlelight service on Christmas Eve, a big storm blows in, and the rain pours down, and the roof springs a leak, and the water pours through behind the altar on the back wall. The old plaster just sucks it up like a dry sponge, and it just crumbles. And they've spent 3 months. There's no way they're going to get this ready in the next 24 hours. But being new, they say somehow God's will, everything works out for a reason. You know, all those great metaphysicians. Concepts. Anyway, so, kind of, sad minister and wife go to the youth's afternoon auction that day. They're raising money for the youth program. They're selling things, and they're auctioning off this tablecloth. And it's a beautiful tablecloth in a sense. It's a 15-foot banquet tablecloth, and it's on gold with hand lace kind of stuff. Kind of old, but, looks good. And he has this great idea that he was going to get it and hang it over the hole behind the altar. Here is God inspired. He bids and wins the bid at $6.50, big spender there. And he gets it, that night, and the next day, Christmas Eve day, and the winds are blowing, the snow's coming down. He gets there about the middle of, the day. And as he gets there and is opening the door, he sees an old lady standing at the bus stop. And he knows the bus isn't going to come for about a half hour. So he says, why don't you come on inside where it's warm, wait for the bus inside. And she comes in, she says that she's not from this part, that she was applying for a job as a governess to a well-to-do, well-known family, and they didn't get it. She didn't get it because she was a refugee from the war, didn't speak English very good. And so she just sat down in the back, and she did her prayers, and didn't even see the guy putting up the new tapestry he got, and he hung it up. And she picked her head up, walked up to the stage, and said, "That's mine!" And it's like, she came up and said, "You know what, that's tapestry. It was once mine." And she showed her initials that she embroidered in the back, and went on to tell him the story that she and her husband lived in Vienna, and that they were assisting individuals get away from the Nazi occupation, to the point where the husband said, "You know what, we got to go to Switzerland to save our lives. We can't go together. We'll never get out. You go first and I'll follow." And so she went, made it to Switzerland, and her husband never showed up. And she heard that he was taken in a concentration camp and died there. And so the minister, after hearing that story, said, it's your tablecloth. She thought about it and said, there's nothing I can do with a 15-foot tablecloth. Just keep it. And so that night at the candlelight service, people were just awed by the evening, that tablecloth and the gold, catching the sparkles, the dawn of the new day, the excitement after the service. Everybody walking out said, "Hey, Rev, the place looks beautiful. It hasn't looked this good in years." And one guy was left kind of looking at the tablecloth in amazement. And as he walked out the door, he said to the minister, "I had a tablecloth like that once. My wife and I were in Vienna at the time. But because of the Nazi occupation, we had to split up and never saw her again." Woohoo, is right. Goosebumps up that guy's back. And he said, "Let me tell you this story I heard today." And he said, let's see if I can find the number of those people that she was interviewing with, and which he did, and they had the address, and they jumped in this guy's old jalopy, drove across town. They went to the door, and right there in front of the minister, there was this reunion of love and miracles and Christmas gifts, and it's just amazing the possibilities that exist when you're willing to hear and see as God sees, and listen to that spoken word and say, people just kind of, coincidence, wasn't that good luck? Sometimes there are so many dynamics in life. Have you noticed that it is impossible just for it to be dumb luck? To think that this young family would have started there, that they would have been excited about the candlelight service, worked for 3 months, then to have a hole put in the wall, that a roof that held up for decades all of a sudden would spill right there, that he would actually go to the kids' raffle and then buy something. And, all these, and then this lady was there, that he went to work at the very moment she was there, not a half hour earlier, not a half hour later, and then the guy walked. That's not coincidence, guys. At least I don't think. That isn't just dumb luck. There is a divine expression, those miracles that are willing to show up when I can get my myths and my stories that I'm making up, that it is impossible for God to show up here because this is way beyond the big guy's abilities. But rather, you know what? I'm going to just take that risk. You know, do you hear what I hear? You know, do you hear the Spirit speaking? You know, are you open to the possibilities that I am going to trust a little bit more than my sadness or my pain or my stories of stretching or struggle or scarcity or constriction, the body, the doctor, the list, the list. Am I going to believe that there's a greater possibility here? Because I got to tell you, our nature is one of trust. We're willing, a little gambling on the side with life, kind of what we do. I mean, the farmers, when they put the seeds in the ground, if that's not a big trust walk with nature, I mean, they really have no idea what nature's going to do. They got hoping, but it's a trust. Are you willing to have that same kind of trust and risk and gamble in God? I mean, when you get in relationship and you got a new partner, if that's not a risk, I don't know what is. You don't know where that's going. But you got to believe in what Spirit's love can prevail here. You invest for your future. You trust that works. You drive through an intersection on a green light. You're really, taking, you're trusting that guy coming the other direction is going to actually stop at the red light. And so what I want us to know is that, we're going to have to step out there. And sometimes we hit it, and sometimes we don't. Sometimes it's going to work, but it doesn't mean to stop playing in life. It's like the notes on the piano. Somebody plays the piano and like me, I miss the note. I say, man, that's a sour note, Christian. And it's not as if there's any sour notes on that piano. I assure you, every one of those notes on that piano is a good. I'm going to grab a different mic because I am making noise here. All right. We'll turn this one off and turn this one on. There you go. Where am I going? No sour notes on that piano. Every note is good unless I'm playing. Then I put some together that just don't sound so good. In our life, it's not as if God's good sometimes and bad other times. It's like if something's unfolding in our life, am I going to choose to believe that there's a greater story here than the mythology that I'm creating in my mind that says it's bad? Why would I want to do that to myself? If I find myself in a dynamic that is stretching me, or I find myself in a responsibility that's just boring, or whatever it is, I can choose to change the way in which I see. Right? Do I see as God sees? And I find that the way I like to change it is, how can I see this differently? There's an assignment for you this week. You got any area in your life in this season that may not be as joy-filled or as exciting or dynamic or a stretch or responsibility or family or more presence you got to, whatever it is, ask yourself, how can I see this differently? Because what that does for me is it turns my experience from whatever that concern was, the myth of my mind, to a deeper realization that, you know what? This is an adventure. If anything else, it is a romantic adventure because I came into this world to love just deeper. I came into this world to feel fully. I came into this world to be able to express myself, and where I find myself, whether my partner has disappeared, whether there is a struggle in the economy and they're trying to have me believe a myth in limitation or lack or scarcity, I am going to choose to see as God sees and hear that something that says this is an adventure. It is an odyssey. It is an exciting journey that I'm going to choose to embrace a greater possibility than just struggling in a sense of, woe is me. This is just a sour something that God sent me. No, every note is good. If it's sour, it's because the person who's playing with the infinite symphony of possibilities is hitting things not in the right order. I'm the one who's got to begin to recognize that I get to change here. They've got all sorts of studies that say, the happiest people continue to create the happiest circumstances in their life. Like, duh. As if we didn't know that one. And those that are miserable tend to create situations that substantiate their misery. It's like what we've got to do is begin to shift our awareness. The story of the two guys behind prison bars? One's looking out and sees the mud, and the other is looking out and seeing the stars. What is it that you're seeing? How are you looking at life and the situations that are at hand? Spirit constantly says, use my eyes. See as I see. Look at the possibilities here that exist for you. because there's something higher. But what happens is we get caught up in the trajectory of where we're going. We get caught up in our stories, or these are the rules, and these are the regulations, and this is the way it's got to be, because this is what I am reading, this is what I am seeing, this is what I am hearing. I returned something to the store recently. It's not the most fun time to stand in that return line if you haven't noticed in stores. So you get to make it fun. I did my best. But as I finally got to the counter, I missed like the 10-day window return policy. Yeah, and I was gonna get less than ministerial with them. But instead I gave them the big eyes. That look, Anyway, the clerk behind there, who is, probably just out of junior high, she had kindness in her heart. And it's like, she said, these are the rules, but you know what? I'm going to refund you anyway. It's like there was a higher possibility here. It's not the letter of the law. It is the spirit of the law that we talk about all the time. That's what the season is about. Remember the spirit? There's a higher way of being. I can see things differently here. I'm going to look at it differently. The story from the Bible about the ones that got caught in the act of adultery, which the punishment is to be stoned to death, as if getting caught in the act isn't embarrassing enough. It's like all of a sudden, they were going to stone this individual to death when Jesus goes ahead and says, the first among you without sin cast the first stone, which is probably a good approach with guilt. Is inflicting some guilt to start with. But what I also think was happening, because people were saying, but the law says, the law says that we are to stone this person to death. And what he is saying, but there is a higher way of being. There is a greater way in which you can see this situation. You need not follow the dictates, the myths, or the laws that do not support the greater expression to God. What are you listening to here? Are you listening to your heart? You're listening to that mind or that brain. You get to decide, okay, what is it I'm going to experience here? And what happens is we have been so trained through our prayers and through decades and centuries and millennium to praying to something outside to gift us what it is we need, that we have forgotten that we don't pray to the outside something. We don't pray to the cosmic Santa Claus to deliver the gifts. What we are is that gift. What we are is that place. We pray from the place of love. We pray from that higher consciousness. We pray from hearing as Spirit speaks and allow what comes forth from us to be God. Those who see me see the one that sent me. Let us be such a clear transparency that the presence of God shows itself in all situations, that we cannot be fooled by appearances because the authorities or the doctors or the headlines have said something, this is the way it is, and I begin to believe that myth. Yes. This season reminds us that there is a higher way to be. There's a young guy from California, Marion Smith. And he went back to the East Coast for Christmas holidays, wanted to experience some cold because 50 degrees wasn't cold enough for him. And so there he is, walking along the streets, freezing like any good Californian would be doing. So he turned into the first open door, which happened to be Union Station in Washington, D.C. And he grabbed himself a cup of coffee, sat down, warmed up his fingers and toes with the coffee, and decided to get some good quality people watching experience in the station. As he looked around, he saw the restaurant tables, come into the grand hall, and the food come wafting in, the smell, and kind of enticed him to maybe an early dinner here. But he also noticed another guy who kind of was also moved by the wonderful aromas of the restaurant. But this guy, he was gaunt. His hands were chapped. Clothes were thin, bedraggled or disheveled. Obviously, he was a homeless guy. And so Marion shared that he was thinking, maybe I give him some coffee. But then his head was saying, you just stay out of it. But his heart was saying, no. But his head was going, and he was almost, and then while he was debating with himself, this nice couple came out of the restaurant, and they stopped at this homeless gentleman and said, hey, my good fellow, you know what? My wife and I, we just had dinner, and our appetites were not as large as we had thought, and we just hate to waste good food. Could you help us out and do something with this? And just gave him a big container. And, Marion's just kicking himself. Why didn't he? And he just watched the homeless guy just sit down with the joy. And, he said, Merry Christmas. And he sat down, he opened the container, and he rearranged the little soup crackers in a certain way. He examined the club sandwich, set it down, and then the soup. He opened up the soup and warmed up his hands and caught the fragrance, and then unwrapped the plastic spoon and dipped it into that soup, filled it. And just as he was about to take a bite, he stopped, just suddenly, just right there. And he looked out, and Marion looked where he was looking, and walking in the door at the Union Station was a guy who, looked like Walking Dead or something. Here came a guy, another homeless individual. This time, he had no hat, he had no gloves. His pants were like thin summer pants. His coat was threadbare. His hands were chapped. His face was blue. His shoes were open, and he was like he could barely stand. And everybody in the place, but the only one who did anything, as this new homeless guy came staggering in, was the guy with the soup and the sandwich, who got up, went on over, put his arm around him and said, come on, old Pops, why don't you sit down and join me over here? And as he sat him down, he took his hands, rubbed them briskly, took his coat that he was wearing, the homeless guy, and put it around his shoulders. And he said, hey, Pops, my name is Jack, and I've just been given this miracle meal by a couple, and they gave me more than I could eat. And I hate to see good food go to waste. Could you help me out here and do something with that? And before he could even say something, he scooped up a thing of the soup and gave it to him and placed it in his hand. And the guy said, you know what? I can help you out under one condition, that if you go halfway with me and we split this sandwich together. Well, Marion wasn't moved in that moment to go up and grab 2 big tubs of coffee and a bunch of pastries and bring it back to that guy. And what he shared is he left that station that day warmer than he had been that whole week. All of a sudden within him, he saw that spirit of Christmas going forth. And what excites me about this time of the year is that there is a spirit that is carried about with possibilities and greater ways of seeing and greater ways of being, that brings me a sense and hope for humanity that I am not normally caught in when I'm reading the headlines, but the old myths fall away as there is a new vibration that raises to the surface of a greater way in which we can be together in humanity. But it's a matter of us choosing to see with that divine vision, to see as God sees the truth rather than limitation, to see freedom instead of constriction, to know that with this greater way of seeing, it will make me a better healer, a better parent, a better metaphysician, a better light bringer to this world, because I am able to hear something that my old myth was unable to catch. Jonathan Livingston Seagull, that good old classic from the 70s. Yeah, Richard Bach, Jonathan's teacher, Chang, was teaching him to fly as fast as thought. You have to see yourself already there. You got that? To see yourself already there. And the trick is not to be bound by your body and your 42-inch wingspan, but the trick is, he says, is to know your true nature, that you are like unwritten numbers everywhere possible at every moment in time. That's how we want to see. We want to be able to see the greater possibility, irrespective if there's a big hole in the wall, center stage, that you're sure that everybody's going to be looking at. But if I truly believe that there are no sour notes in the kingdom of God, then there is something greater there that I don't know, and I get to choose to hold on to the greater possibility and to listen from the depth of my being and trust that, this Christmas spirit is coming forth, and I'm not going to be blind to it. I'm not going to be deaf to it. Helen Keller told us the only blind person at Christmas is the one that doesn't have Christmas in their heart. My challenge to you is for all of us to fill our hearts with that wonderful Christmas spirit and bring it to our world. God bless us as we do this together. Hey, let's keep it going as we bring Margaret Owens back to our stage.
Thank you.
And whoever was in charge of the decorations, they are just so beautiful. Oh my gosh. Callie, was that you? Because it looks like you.
In an old twin bed in my grandpa's house, in the room upstairs I wait for reindeer on the roof and the sound of sleigh bells that I anticipate. I've been told that I gotta be fast asleep, or the big man he won't show. I circled everything I want in the Sears catalog, so it's off to dreams I go. 'Cause I wanna be wild, wanna be blown away by the stockings overflowing on Christmas Day. And the fire in the hearth is warming the room almost as much as my grandfather's love. I'm wrapped up in the magic of the moment. The family gathered round and our hearts aglow. I can picture it in my mind oh so clearly, and I believe so off to sleep I go. Well, I'm older now and my eyes are blurry, but my heart, it sees just fine. When I rest my gaze on the many blessings and the magic that is mine. It's a miracle that grass can grow and flowers bloom and the sun floats in the sky. That the smallest light can illumine the darkest room, and I've still got dreams to try. And I wanna be wild, wanna be blown away by all the moments I create today. I could sit on my ass, I could let the day pass, but it seems a waste to throw this gift away. Will I bring the same belief in childhood wonder to the grown-up games I choose to play? Will the joy of giving and receiving be witnessed more than just on Christmas Day? Twinkling lights get multiplied every time you cross your eyes. And power is in the present, just the way the word implies. I'm talking about being there for others. I'm speaking to even in your dreams. I'm telling you to be the love in your life when the world is going to extremes. Keep remembering the magic is within you. The day is yours to do with what you will. So take a moment to get quiet and be still. Just be still. Let yourself be wild, be blown away by all the love that flows through you today. And as far as your dreams, all your hopes and desires, you've got all you need and more than you require to light up the sky, to love brave and strong, no matter if the world tells you you're wrong. Remembering the wonder of childhood, remember the magic in the moment, the joy that comes from giving and receiving. Remember the power
That is Margaret Owens. Woo!